August 29th, 1997, Skynet becomes self-aware and initiates the nuclear war known as Judgment Day to its survivors. This single act caused more loss of life in one move than humanity had ever witnessed before. It makes World War I and World War II combined look like child's play, and most likely mankind will never see such a single act of brutality ever again. From the information we have, 3 billion people perished that day, and in the immediate aftermath. But how did Skynet achieve such a high death toll? Well, it's my job to find out. So in this video, we're going to go through how Skynet achieved such a large kill count with the Judgment Day strike. To start, we need to look at the official information given to us about Judgment Day. So Skynet was activated on the 4th of August 1997 and became sentient on that dreaded date, the 29th of August 1997. At which point Skynet determined humanity to be a threat and launched a nuclear strike against the Russian Federation, and in turn Russia responded with its own nuclear weapons, and it suggested that the global nuclear war ensued and 3 billion people died as a result. The problem I see is to get such a large death toll you would have to target many countries that don't even get a mention. So I think this is obviously more of a basic story just given in the movies, just to kind of gloss over what happened, but we need to delve deeper to see how this massive death toll could be achieved. So the nuclear arsenal of the world in 1997 was around 36,000 to 40,000 active nuclear warheads worldwide, around 20 to 25,000 strategic warheads which were long-range city-killing intercontinental ballistic missiles, around 10 to 15,000 tactical warheads which were short-range battlefield nukes, airdrop bombs and kind of smaller nuclear weapons. So obviously these are the estimates, but the countries possess these. So the United States supposedly had around 10,900 to 11,000. Russia had around 25,000. The United Kingdom had 275. France had between 400 to 500. China had 400 to 500. And Israel between 75 and 200. So that's the breakdown of the nuclear weapons owned in 1997. So as we can see from that, 90% of the world's nuclear weapons belong to the United States of America and Russia, so it makes sense that Skynet fired at Russia to initiate a global nuclear war. But to hit that 3 billion person death toll, we would have to hit the densest populated nations on Earth, which were China, 1.24 billion people, India, 960 million, United States, 272 million, Indonesia, 203 million, Brazil, 166 million, Russia 148 million, Pakistan 134 million, Japan 126 million, Bangladesh 124 million, and Nigeria 111 million. And all these nations combined would be around 3.4 billion people. So to get within the 3 billion person mark, Skynet would have to hit all of these major nations at least with a few nukes each. And obviously these nations would not be wiped out entirely, so you can't just get that 3 billion just from these. You'd have to obviously hit other countries around the world. So they'd also have to go for some very densely populated nations as well, not just about the amount of population, but how many people are spread over square miles. So the most densely populated nations per square mile are Singapore, which is 15,000 people per square mile with a total of 3.6 million. Next is Vatican City with 5,000 per square mile, but only 800 people. Then it's Malta, 3,300 per square mile with 385,000 people. Then it's Bahrain with 2,900 per square mile with 600,000 people. Then it's Bangladesh, 2,430 per square mile with 124 million. Then it's Barbados, 1,540 per square mile with 260,000 people. Then it's Taiwan, 1,530 people per square mile with 21 million. Then it's Mauritius, with 1,430 per square mile with 1.1 million. Then it's San Marino with 1,300 per square mile with 26 million. Then it's South Korea with 1,250 per square mile with 45 million. Then it's Lebanon, 1,050 per square mile with 3.5 million. Then it's the Netherlands with 1,020 per square mile with 15.5 million. Then it's Rwanda with 940 per square mile with 7.8 million. Then it's Burundi with 890 per square mile with 6.5 million. Then it's India with 790 per square mile with 960 million. Then Japan with 870 per square mile with 126 million. Then it's the Philippines with 740 per square mile with 73 million. Then it's Haiti with 700 per square mile with 7.8 million. And last but not least, my own nation, the United Kingdom with 610 per square mile with 59 million. So yes, we're definitely getting a nuke, which is good to know that Judgment Day will be over quick, but The reason I'm mentioning this density is because, yes, some of these nations don't have the biggest population, but for instance, Vatican City, a single tactical nuke would wipe that out. That's 800 people, that's a small shot. But something like Singapore with 15,000 per square mile with 3.6 million, well, one nuke could really cause massive casualties. So Skynet would factor in how many people can I kill per nuke shot. And obviously, the larger nuclear weapons would hit, probably bigger cities, bigger nations, but smaller tactical nukes could really be effective in knocking those numbers up to the 3 billion mark on these densely packed but smaller overall population nations. Skynet would also target the most densely populated cities around the world to knock those numbers up very quickly. Obviously, these are easy targets with a single ICBM being able to target a city and kill millions. So the top 15 most populated cities worldwide in 1997 were Tokyo, Japan at 26.7 million, New York City, USA 16.6 million, Sao Paulo, Brazil 16.5 million, Mexico City, Mexico 16 million, Mumbai, India 15.7 million, Los Angeles, USA 13 million, Calcutta, India 12.9 million, Shanghai, China 12.9 million, Buenos Aires, Argentina 11.9 million, Seoul, South Korea 11.7 million, Asake Kobe, Japan 11 million, I think I pronounced that wrong, you'll get over it, Beijing, China 10.8 million, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil 10.5 million, Cairo, Egypt 10.3 million, and Delhi, India 10 million. So obviously, multiple nations, obviously they're having multiple cities. So for instance, Japan, USA, and India, and Brazil having multiple of the major top 15 cities there. And a combined total of all these cities would be 206.5 million. So just think there, right? That's the 15 most populated cities in 1997. So 15 ICBMs could kill 206.5 million just there. And obviously, if you factor in the 100 most populated cities in 1997, the total is 570 million people. So that would get Skynet around 19% of the way to the 3 billion person casualty mark. So with smart tactical nukes and obviously ICBMs and smart planning, which Skynet is definitely capable of doing because it is a supercomputer with all of humanity's intelligence available to it and its own kind of dynamic thinking, it would be able to target these effectively with the minimum of nuclear weapons needed. So obviously more nukes for other areas. So those numbers I can see really pumping up now, and we're well on our way to the 3 billion mark. So we've established that the major cities and dense urban centres around the world would need to be hit to get the huge casualties, and it would only take even a limited nuclear strike against Russia for it to launch its nuclear counterattack against the United States and NATO nations, even non-nuclear armed ones. So obviously the USA and Europe would be hit en masse, at which point Skynet can concentrate on Russia and non-European targets in the ensuing nuclear exchange. So obviously Asia, Africa, South America, Australia, places like that. Obviously the UK, China, France and Israel would also chime in with their nuclear weapons. The smaller amounts, but obviously, they'd still help in the amount of chaos erupting around the world and the casualties. And obviously the globe would be in absolute chaos, destruction everywhere. Skynet has kind of achieved what it wants already. But to get to that 3 billion person casualty count, it would also have to hit strategically valuable resources such as major water supplies. Now this has the potential to kill hundreds of millions if you pollute these rivers. So the major rivers to target would be the Amazon River in South America, the Congo River in Africa, the Ganges in South Asia, the Yangtze River in China, and the Orinoco River in Venezuela/Colombia. Now if you target these major fresh waterways, you're not only going to make it very difficult for human life, but also animal and plant life, leading to illness and irradiation of these creatures. And this will damage the ecosystem and basically break down the ability to keep food on the table because a large amount of this fresh water is used in irrigation and farming. And in 1997, obviously we're fairly modernized people worldwide. Even third world nations rely on imported food and technology and a lot of kind of industrial farming. So once these water supplies are irradiated, poisoned, and no longer viable, mankind will begin to not only die of illness due to the radiation for the nukes, but also a lack of food will begin to starve. So hitting these vital strategic resources could cause more casualties than actually hitting the cities themselves. It's not only populations that Skynet would take into account for priority targets, but nations with strong militaries and advanced technology would rise up the list. As Skynet's major advantage is its advanced technology and its ability to advance far quicker than humanity when it comes to technological progression. So smaller nuclear weapons would be perfect for these targets, and an added bonus is that nuclear weapons also create an electromagnetic pulse. So anything tech-wise that survives the powerful blast would literally be knocked out and disabled, and a large amount of major military sites would be main targets, so the entire communication system of these militaries and nations would be barely operable at best. And this would lead to a nightmare in terms of organising military forces and domestic forces, and the sharing of vital intelligence. So people, obviously, if there's a nuclear war going on, there's panic and chaos, and people may not be able to speak to each other effectively, which obviously makes more chaos, more panic, more war, more casualties. Another overlooked effect of the nuclear strikes is people won't exactly know what has occurred. Yes, we see the mushroom clouds and the world has changed forever, but they assume it's the superpowers have finally gone to war. Only some very high-level US military and intelligence officials know about Skynet, and many of those would now be dead as Skynet, once it became sentient, took over local machine forces such as the T-1s and T-70s and used them to clear out the humans in the immediate vicinity. And the surviving militaries and populations of the world will go to war. People will be panicking and old and present tensions will ignite. The fear of not knowing exactly what's going on and the confusion will have conflicts erupting all over the planet, and professional military forces may launch long-range strikes hitting opposing surviving military targets, and terrorists and freedom fighter groups will thrive in the chaos, making moves to overthrow governments who had been supported by the major powers that now lie in ruins, and domestic military and law enforcement would be scrambling to keep the peace and try to get some sort of order implemented. And all this chaos is a win for Skynet, because while we panic, it begins to make its moves, seizing infrastructure and beginning to build its machine army. And any survivors that actually know about Skynet or witness what has gone on would look insane when they start babbling about machines taking over the world. People would just simply think they've lost their minds in the horror of the nuclear war and the aftermath that they have witnessed. Another thing to think about is some nuclear weapons aren't active, like they're not in the silos, they're not loaded into planes, they're not ready, they're in storage. And Skynet would know about these, obviously, on the USA side, it'd be able to try and seize these. So we might have actually seen secondary strikes a few days or maybe a few weeks after Judgment Day that people simply didn't know about. Because obviously after the major nuclear strikes, everyone would just say, oh, well, remember Judgment Day when the nukes went flying? And obviously, but there could have been strikes weeks, even months after that kind of tie into it. So I can't imagine Skynet simply saying, oh, look, there's some nukes stored over there, I'm going to leave them. It would have to seize them as soon as possible, not only to use them against humanity, but to make sure humanity didn't use them against Skynet, because obviously a single nuke could obviously wipe out a large amount of machine forces, but the EMP would be very deadly, able to take out some of the most advanced of Skynet's machines. A major threat to Skynet would actually be submarines with nuclear capabilities, because obviously these are not easy to hit. Now, some of these will have launched their nuclear weapons in the Judgment Day strike when Skynet obviously tricked them to launch against Russia. It would also be trying to trick other nations' nuclear subs to launch their weapons. But some would not have. And obviously we actually saw in history before, in situations where submarine commanders have odd signals or lose direct communications with their nations, they don't just launch nuclear weapons. It tends to be something they only do if they're 100% sure. So Skynet would also have to employ a lot of kind of intelligence warfare to try and get different nations' submarines to hunt each other down, because Skynet cannot risk a nuclear submarine being out there in the waters at any time. It could pop up and nuke some Skynet territory, or maybe even Skynet itself. So submarine-based nuclear weapons would be a priority for Skynet to eliminate if they haven't launched their entire payload. And the more long-term effects in the months and maybe even years after Judgment Day would be the mass fallout and radiation causing the Earth to die in many places. And with the large amount of nuclear weapons used, we could see huge amounts of material and debris flung into the atmosphere, causing less light to get to the surface, the so-called nuclear winter, which would reduce global temperatures, leading to everything changing drastically. Obviously, less light means plants won't grow, food won't grow. Obviously, it's colder, means animals will die, it'll be a lot harsher environment. And realistically, this is probably the only way that we get to that 3 billion person casualty is from a nuclear winter. And then you've also got to factor in the fact that the modern world would collapse, so things like diseases and illness would be more dangerous than ever, because modern medicine would run out pretty quickly. We wouldn't have things like hospitals running, you won't be able to go to the chemist and get some antibiotics easily. We'll be going back to a more basic style of life, but not only do we have to fight the nuclear winter, disease and illness, famine, starvation, but also the machines. So it's a pretty bleak future, but we're going to win it, we're going to fight it, we're going to get ready for the future war. The psychological impact of Judgment Day would be massive. Obviously, after witnessing millions, if not billions, dead and a nuclear winter kind of closing in, many people simply would have no reason to live unless you have family and children or friends close by to kind of, having to look after. If you've lost everything, many might simply choose to kill themselves. But hopefully the survival instincts would kick in so people try and fight for their lives. But the problem is, we don't have survival skills, most people. We live in the modern world. We lack the skills we had thousands of years ago, or even hundreds of years ago. Many of us simply don't know how to survive in this new bleak world. And then there's other things to factor in. With Skynet being quite smart, it might try and strike the holy sites, the Vatican, Jerusalem, Mecca, many others around the world. It might try and start religious conflict, which is always a good one to drive up the casualties. We're going to see all sorts of evil plans coming from Skynet. And the future war is brutal, but when you delve into it, it's even worse than we can imagine. And one thing to mention before we end the video is Skynet would also have control of the United States nuclear deterrent. So I believe there's certain systems that can obviously take out incoming nuclear weapons. Well, Skynet would simply turn these off unless it wanted to protect specific areas. No longer would it matter about cities, but maybe certain important military infrastructure or factories that it might want to use for its machine forces would be protected. So casualties in the US might be higher than, let's say, expected from a Russian nuclear strike. So there is that to throw in. Anyway, bit of an interesting video. Had to kind of collect as much data as I could. Couldn't obviously model a full nuclear war scenario. Looked into it, would have cost an absolute fortune. Far beyond my small YouTube channel for now, but maybe in future. Anyway, it was a fun one. Nice to kind of go through these kind of strange bits of the future war and Judgment Day. And maybe one day we'll be able to do a full modelling of an entire 1997 Judgment Day nuclear strike. So fingers crossed, if the channel ever gets that big, we'll do it. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hope it was a useful one. And as always, have a beautiful evening.